Before we get installing these head studs, I'm gonna give you a quick rundown and part numbers on what we got going on here. So if your LS has all same length studs, you're gonna have a 234 4317, I believe is the number, and all of your large studs are gonna be all same length. Some have different lengths, so just make sure you get the right one. But this is the Gen 3. It's not supposed to have these, but whatever. This is the part number that works for them. So you'll have your washers for the short and the long bolts. 12-point nuts. You can probably opt for a 6-point if you like. And I'm using LS7 0.051, I believe, thickness. Yeah, that should be right. So we're going to go ahead and start putting these in. A little bit of procedure. Make sure you clean all these off. There's cosmoline on these. So before you get started, make sure and wipe all these down. Soap and water, or soak them in something and clean them off. Alright, so first things first. After you clean up all your hardware, we're going to start installing all the studs. These ones are going to take a 3/16 Allen. These ones are 1/8 inch. You're just going to run these in by hand. You're not going to want to crank them down. They say just to put them till they stop. I usually give them a little extra because these things are known to backing out a little bit. So put some lubricant on the threads and we'll just slowly start screwing these in one by one. No special procedure, just hit them till they bottom out. I'm gonna use a gun, but just be mindful when you tighten them down that you might crank it down too much. So if you're not comfortable with your gun, use hand tools or a T-handle like I'm gonna use to tighten these up. Alright, so nobody has ever installed these before. The side that has this nipple right here, that's going to be the side that goes down. Whatever side has the hex head, you're going to need that pointed up if you've never done these, and might put them in upside down. Pretty self-evident, but you never know. Alright, so we'll start with the big ones. We'll get our 3/16 socket. And so you're not cranking these down, you're just going until they barely touch. Alright, now these small bolts are going to be a 1/8. Alright, so in theory you should be done. I like to come through with a T-handle or something real small and just kind of snug these down a bit. ARP doesn't really give you any sort of specs on torque on these because they're just supposed to bottom out and then just stop. I like to just give them a little tiny bit. Like I say, you're not going to get a whole lot of torque on a T-handle here, so just some reassurance. So we're going to go ahead and set our head gaskets on there now, but you want to definitely make sure and wipe off any leftovers that's here, because on these short ones they don't go down into the bore and there's quite a bit of excess that gets onto the deck of the block here. So make sure when you clean all that off, you don't want that underneath your gasket. So I went ahead and gave the whole block and the cylinder head surface a nice cleaning one more time before we go and set these on. Pretty evident the front goes to the front of the engine. Pretty sure if you made it this far, you already can figure that out for yourself. Make sure you get it on the dowels. So grab our cylinder head, drop it straight down. No need to shove it or any forcing. Make sure it sits on the dowels. Got our other one. All right, so when we go to start putting these nuts on, you need to put some of this lubricant on them as well. And these ones aren't too big of a deal because you're only torquing them to, I think, 28 foot-pounds. But on these, there's a knurling on the bottom, and that needs to go down on the block so that way when you're tightening the nuts, it doesn't rotate and change your torque spec. So this will actually stay stationary. You'll lubricate the top of this washer here. And you lubricate the nut, the bigger nut. That way these can spin freely and torque it properly and not the nut spinning around affecting your torque specs. So we'll get all these lubed up and dropped on there. All right, well, we're kind of clean. So we're gonna go ahead and put this as best we can. You want it on a little bit on the threads, and then you also want to put some on the bottom of these nuts just for reassurance. But I like to just put a little bit on the threads as well. You know, it'll spread around so you don't have to get crazy with it. We'll get all these started. All right, now on these small ones, these are going to be a 3/8 12 point. Same thing as the other one. Just put a little bit of lubricant on the mounting surface where it's going to hit the washer. Okay, now that I've cleaned myself off and I don't feel like I need to take a shower, we're going to get these snug down. So we'll start with the big ones. You do not want to crank these down. These are just so you don't have to spin them by hand. These are a 3-step torque spec. This is just saving a little time. We're not tightening them down at all. So my torque specs are 25, 50, 80 foot-pounds for the big ones. And then for 11 through 15, 28 foot-pounds. So we'll do all 3 steps. All right, now we'll bump it up to 50. Hopefully my battery doesn't die. I feel like I say that every video. And now we're going to step up to the big boy. That one said 80 foot-pounds. We got all those torqued down so we can move over to the little guys. These ones are going to go down to 28 foot-pounds. Shit. And we're back. Back to 28 foot-pounds. All right, there you go. That's how you do these studs on these LS Gen 3 at least. Pretty much the same process, but you got to just pay attention because some of these have a little different torque specs on these, so just make sure you read the paper for what your application is.